Good afternoon, everyone. Please take your seats. My name is David Van Zant, and I'm the president here at the New School. And it's wonderful to host all of you here today with Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer right here at the New School. We're very proud. Gail has been a regular visitor here to campus. She was here a couple of years ago when we inaugurated this new building and this auditorium, this beautiful auditorium. And just this past November, she came back and helped us open up our Performing Arts Hub on 13th Street, which I hope you get a chance to visit. Gail very much understands that the New School is part of what makes Manhattan vibrant and great. The New School is a leading educational institution. We have over 10,000 students, and we employ over 3,000 individuals right here on our Greenwich Village campus. Our emphasis is on preparing students to lead in the growing creative economy, to be innovators, to be thinkers and doers, and probably most importantly, to improve both the city and the world around them. In our classrooms and beyond, we're engaged in the issues of the city, whether it's urban policy, sustainability, social justice. And the city is very important to us because our students gain work experience and contribute through internships or professional positions in dozens of city agencies and cultural organizations, including the mayor's office, the MTA, the city parks, emergency management, just to name a few. The city really is a living laboratory for our students and our faculty here at the New School. For example, at our Parsons School of Design, there is a lab called the DESIS, Design for Social Innovation and Sustainability. In one project, students conducted field research that used the community gardens of the Lower East Side as a lens on neighborhood needs and services. Another project explored ways to build bridges between city government and the public. Finally, we are delighted to be a cultural hub in Lower Manhattan, a destination where city residents and visitors come to stimulate their thinking, enrich their creative lives, and participate in conversation community. And today, I think, is just a great example of that. We are glad you're all here, and now it's my great honor to introduce our youth singer, Marla Louissant, who will do a little something for us. Marla?
Grew up in a town that is famous as a place of movie scenes. Noise is always loud, there are sirens all around, and the streets are mean. If I can make it here, I can make it anywhere, that's what they say. See my name in lights or my name on a marquee down on Broadway. Even if it ain't what it seems, I got a pocket full of dreams, baby. I'm from New York, concrete jungle where dreams are made of. There's nothing you can't do. Now you're in New York. These streets will make you feel brand new. These lights will inspire you. Let's hear it for New York, New York, New York. Thank you, Manhattan. Thank you, Manhattan, and welcome everyone to Manhattan Borough President Gail A. Brewer's second annual State of the Borough Forum. Thank you for allowing me to sing for you guys. It's like my biggest honor to be here to celebrate the State of the Borough in song. Now, what would song be without dance? Ever think of that? Well, here to help us answer that question is a dance company from East Harlem, KR3T, and we are here, and they're represented by Violeta Galagarza. I got the name right. And she is the genius, founder, and choreographer for KR3Ts, also known as Keep Rising to the Top. Please welcome them to the stage.
Let me see your hands up high. Wanna come with me and take a ride?
Get!
Well beat.
1 for the funky, 2 for the soul, 3 for the fresh. Let's go.
Keep on,
keep on, keep on, keep on. Keep on, keep on dancing. 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 Keep on, keep on. Don't stop the music.
Louis Styles. Look, baby girl, you're so damn fine though. I'm trying to know if I can hit it from no. I'm showing you like some fine wine though. And when it's over, I press rewind though. Ay, you talking bands, girl, I got it. Benjamin's all in my pocket. I traded in my trues for some robins. You playing Batman, Fetty's gonna rob her. Ay, I got a Glock in my Rari. Ay, 17, yeah. I got a Glock in my Rari. 17 shots, no 38. She's mine, wonder when she'll be mine. She walk past like press rewind to see that ass one more time. And I got this soda. For me boys, they know us. All fast money, they so much. No one can control us.
Tell me what you see. Is it money or it's me? I smoke 20, smell a weed. I got honeys in my V. They like Monty, can you be my baby daddy? I'm like, yeah. I got robins on my jeans. You see the wings on every pair. All you see is Remy boys. You know my niggas everywhere. And if somebody got a problem, we could meet up anywhere. Now go say some. Don't you niggas play dumb? You know where we came from. You don't want sauce, no A1.
I'm like, yeah, she's fine. Wonder when she'll be mine. She walk past like press rewind to see that ass one more time. And I got this soda. Remy boys, they know us. All cash money, no slow bucks. No one can control us.
Say what now? Huh? You know what to it. Yeah. Let's dance. See you dancing. All the dances, you know what to do. I made this part for you. Say what now? Look at here. Finna get loose. Huh? Finna get loose. Huh? Finna get loose. Huh? You wanna roll some grass, gon' do that. You ain't trying to pass, but don't do that. You gotta drink the mask, gon' do that. You ready to act the ass, gon' do that. Say what now? Look at here. Finna get loose. Huh? Finna get loose. Huh? Finna get loose. Huh? Finna get loose. Where you from? Where that at? Where you headed? What is that? What you doing? Feeling that? Get that cake up. Open your mind. Get blind, confused. Keep your distance. Unless you wanna get with this. Me and the renegade, like grenade, blowing up mine, dime and blue. Chopping like sumo, hungry like Cujo, smoking that Pluto. No ticking time like pan on the rope.
Lil La stay making hits, boy. Dropped in the club, 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 in the club. Drop in the club, 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 drop. I stay making hits. Drop, 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 drop.
Got a mean drop, got him, got a mean drop, got a mean drop, got him, got a mean drop, got a mean drop, got him, got a mean drop.
Drop, 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 drop.
Pick it up, let's get it. Got a mean drop, got him, got a mean drop.
Switch it one time, now switch it back, baby.
Got a mean wrist, got a mean drop.
Switch it. Lil' La stay making hits. Drop, 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 drop,
Pick it up, let's get it. Got a mean drop, got a mean drop.
Switch it one time, switch it back.
Thank you, KR3Ts. All right, now the man we've been waiting for. U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer is here, so we'll welcome to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Okay, it's great to be here. I'll be very brief, but I did want to say a few words about your great borough president, Gail Brewer, and the amazing job she does. You know, representing Manhattan is a very, very difficult thing to do because Manhattan is so diverse. It's diverse in every way. It's diverse in terms of race, and it's diverse in terms of religion, and it's diverse in terms of economic level and philosophy and everything else. And it takes an amazing person, a person who listens, a person who can take different views and weave them together into a consensus, but not a consensus that's paralysis, but a consensus that moves forward and get things done for people. And that is what Gail Brewer does every day. These days, it's tough. As Jerry Nadler will tell you, we're against some people in Washington. Well, what we've been against, you're now seeing on TV with Donald Trump and Cruz and all of that all the time. And so we depend more and more on local folks, local leaders to get things done, and that's what Gail does. And if you just look at the whole issue of housing, the desperate need for affordable housing, we cannot have Manhattan be a place where middle-class people, working-class people, and poor people cannot live. We'll have no city. But as we try to create new housing for new people, it has to be done in a way that respects neighborhoods and communities and doesn't just roll over things. And I don't know of a single person in the city who's combined those two things together better, more compassionately, more thoughtfully, and in a more effective way than your borough president. So it's going to be a great State of the County address. You have a great leader, and on to do good things for the people who need help. Thank you very much, and have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer. All right, thank you. So, something about me. You may have guessed that I'm a bit of a theater junkie, but it may come to a surprise to some of you that I'm actually majoring in computer science at Fordham University. So, thank you. I've always had a knack for math and science, so majoring in that field was a no-brainer, but theater kind of came, it's fairly new. So my mom and dad always pushed for me to go to the best schools, the best programs, and just to be my best self, like, most parents would. But they were very loving, even though I was the most painfully shy growing up. But that changed when I went to Beacon, and I started sticking my head in the books, and I was even more shy at that point. But after I stepped into my first theater class in 10th grade, all of that changed. When I learned to start taking risks from my theater teacher, Joanne Samato, who is currently the theater instructor at Beacon School. And I quickly learned that theater is all about taking risks, and so is life. And when I saw that the philosophy that my parents had, and the very first rule of theater was to take risks, I knew that I had found a passion of mine, and I knew that I wanted to develop all of those things all at once. So I knew that the more risks I took, then the more I can learn about myself and be better prepared to become my best self, which made a lot of sense at that point. So when I started auditioning and for the school plays and things like that, my very first risk that I took was to audition for the lead in Caroline or Change last year in December. And I started winning awards that I didn't know existed. A lot of opportunities flew in at that point as well, and I was, the cast and I were invited to perform at AADA. We just took our performance and took it to a different location, which was fun. I was interviewed on the news. Just a lot of things happened. We also went on a commercial, Mom, in LA, which also came to a surprise to both of us. But just a lot of things have happened just from that one risk, just going for it and just going for the lead in a play. Who knew? And sometimes I just sit back and I ask myself, seriously, what life am I living? All of these opportunities flying in from one opportunity, I don't get it. But being here, singing, and emceeing for you guys was also one of the opportunities that came in, and I'm just very glad that I could be here. Now, I think that's why Borough President Brewer asked me to sing and introduce her today. And she understands that young people are a big part of what the city is, and that's what makes us the greatest city in the world, young people. So she knows that we want a voice and a say in issues involving the quality of life in our neighborhoods and our access to housing, education, and jobs. And we want a say in the opportunities that will make our future, and we want our leaders to be investing in that future right now. Now, I am out here as a New Yorker, or a young New Yorker, I should distinguish, excited about the future and living life one step at a time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Manhattan Borough President Gail A. Brewer.
Please sit down. You know how I am. I hate it. Sit down, sit down, sit down. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Marla, Louissant, for those inspiring words and for being the welcoming voice of our 2016 State of the Borough Forum. Let me say a few words about this amazing woman who has taken time from her studies in computer science at Fordham University to be our MC today. Last June, I spoke at the Beacon High School commencement when Marla graduated. It was at Beacon that this phenomenally talented actor and singer played the title role in Caroline or Change. That role won her the Gershwin Award for Best Actress and the top female acting prize at the National High School Musical Theater Awards, known as the Jimmys. It seems that on the West Coast, yes. It seems that on the West Coast, the Oscars have a diversity problem. Let me tell you that here in New York, the Gershwins and the Jimmys do not. Last June, when I saw the curiosity, determination, and excitement of the Beacon students, I was confirmed in my belief in the future of our city, as I always am at graduations. And Marla embodies that spirit. And while I'm on the topic of impressive young people, what a fabulous start to the afternoon from Keep Rising to the Top. They were fabulous. Violetta Galazarza's KR3T's company just celebrated 25 years of encouraging New Yorkers ages 5 to 34 to understand that no matter what their level of skill, they can achieve their goals through dedication, determination, and hard work. The company began serving young people in Spanish Harlem, El Barrio, East Harlem, and has broadened its reach across the city. Just last Wednesday night, Ms. Galagarza spoke at the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan Community Forum, advocating for affordable rehearsal space for all performers in our borough, something we badly need. Badly. I also want to thank the new school and President David Van Zandt, whom you heard from earlier, for providing beautiful space at this Tishman Auditorium. Last year we were uptown, now we're downtown. For this year's State of the Borough Community Conversation, we're focusing on Manhattan youth and culture with 4 creative New Yorkers who really make a difference in our borough. We're going to talk candidly about how to best prepare Manhattan's future leaders. We have Khary Lazarre-White. I love his parents who are here today in addition. He's co-founder and executive director of the Brotherhood SisterSol, a Harlem-based youth organization that reaches young people citywide. Marc Murphy, yes, he's fabulous. Marc Murphy, chef, restaurateur, and television personality, whom I'm sure dedicated foodies recognize. Francisco Núñez, the phenomenal founder and director of Young People's Chorus of New York City, and Sumie Okazaki, fellow at the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families, and professor of counseling and psychology at NYU's Steinert School. They're very, very special. I've always given out my personal email, you all know that, and personal phone number, you all know that. And during the past year, I have been equally active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, keeping you updated on the issues you really care about and I care about. Normally, you're asked to silence your phone during events like this, but today I hope you have your phones out and your thumbs working to join in the Twitter conversation. This past week, we asked residents to tweet their thoughts on what do you want to see in the next generation of Manhattan leaders. So for all of you in the audience or watching on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, tweet your comments, your ideas, and your questions to SOTB 2016, and they might appear on this big screen. For those not on Twitter who want to share your thoughts, just fill out the paper we left on your seat and leave it with us on your way out. We will follow up on your ideas. All of you know how important using the latest technology is to me. Let me tell you a story about this place called Iowa. A reporter is in Jethro's barbecue in Des Moines this past week. This is a true story. A lady says to him, "You must be from New York. Why do you know that? Or do you think that?" the reporter says. She says, the lady from Iowa, "We don't bring computers to bars in Iowa." I'm glad we're in New York. So I am deeply honored to have many of my colleagues in city, state, and federal government here today. I just saw the very special Mayor Dinkins arrive. Thank you very much, Mayor Dinkins. Thank you. He was my boss. So we also have Councilmember Mark Levine. We're very happy to have here Councilmember Corey Johnson, Assemblymember Robert Rodriguez, Senator Brad Hoylman, Assemblymember Guillermo Linares, Assemblymember Udanis Rodriguez, Congressman Jerry Nadler, Councilmember Dan Garodnick, former Councilmember Robert Jackson, Judge Andrea Maisley, Janique House representing Senator Gillibrand, Nina Saxon, who's everywhere, representing Scott Stringer, Matt Rubin representing Governor Cuomo. And then I want to mention, and if there are others, somebody will let me know, but I want to mention the community board chairs who are very, very special to me. I want to thank Rick Eggers from community board number 6, Elizabeth Caputo from community board 7, Jim Kleins from community board 8, Catherine McVeigh Hughes from community board 1, Gigi Lee from community board 3, Henrietta Lyle from community board 10, Padmore John from community board 9, Diane Collier from community board 11, Shah Ali, community board 12. Thank you all very, very much. And we have some agency representatives from the fire department, Deputy Assistant Chief Roger Sakowicz, Battalion Chief Michael Mays, and a very special commissioner of DDC, which is Department of Design and Construction, Benowski Peñamora, who's absolutely wonderful. Assistant Commissioner Jim O'Connell from Office of Emergency Management. Our very own Anna Levin, City Planning Commissioner Extraordinaire. Greg Bishop, who's the Commissioner of SBS, and Roberto Perez, who's Deputy Commissioner of the Mayor's Office. Thank you all very, very much for being here. I also want to thank the talented and dedicated community members who volunteer on behalf of our city. You serve Manhattan in so many ways. As we talked earlier, you serve on your community board. You organize your block. You sit on your tenants or co-op board. You join the PTA. You serve by volunteering at homeless shelters or delivering meals to seniors or keeping your local parks green and clean. All of us, could not do what we do without you as our allies and advisors. Now I'll talk about what we've been up to. My office is always open, and my staff is here to support each and every community in Manhattan. We brought that message home last April with the opening of our storefront office in northern Manhattan at 431 West 125th Street. I believe this is the first storefront ever opened by a borough president, and it has become a hub of the community, helping to promote Harlem tourism, the revitalization of 125th Street. We've held many workshops on topics ranging from tenant clinics, SNAP clinics, to resources for hair braiders, and many others. Over the past year, our lower and northern Manhattan offices have helped thousands of residents throughout the borough connect with benefits and services and job opportunities and NYCHA services and environmental and other quality of life concerns. As you all know, we've worked on housing and schools and technology and the arts, police, community relations, and many other issues. You can read about what we've accomplished together in this newsprint right here, which is out on the table, or you got it when you came in. It's also on the website. In 2015, we focused on ways to increase affordable housing, help small businesses thrive, not easy to do, promote urban gardening and farming in public schools, make sure Manhattan curb cuts are accessible to all New Yorkers, and strengthen relationships, as I said earlier, between the police and our communities. We backed up our agenda with financing, pledging $7.7 million to boost tech projects at 57 public schools, up to $1 million in grants for schools to invest in hydroponics and other gardening projects, $48,000 for Manhattan nonprofits for long-term sustainable projects aimed at restoring trust between police officers and the communities they serve. I read the charter and I realized we could introduce pieces of legislation in the City Council. Thank you, council members. And we introduced 32 pieces of legislation, 8 of which have passed into law. I am particularly proud of the Fair Chance Act, which I co-sponsored with Councilmember Jamani Williams, ensuring that all New Yorkers are considered for jobs based solely on their qualifications, regardless of their arrest or criminal history. No more checking off that box. and the Caregiver Discrimination Act, which I co-sponsored with Councilmember Debbie Rose. It protects workers who serve as caregivers for children, elderly parents, and other family members, following up on the work that we did on paid sick days. I always say with paid sick days, I took all the grief and the mayor got all the credit. That's okay. We've also been active in East Harlem and Inwood as rezoning has gotten underway. My office has lent its land use expertise and city knowledge to ensure that rezoning will improve the lives of all who live in these communities. I am proud of our critical role as convener, bringing people together to improve the borough. In 2015, we did a lot. First, months of meetings with the East Midtown Steering Committee, co-chaired by me and the very special Councilmember Dan Garodnick. The comprehensive and innovative report. Yes, Dan Garodnick. The comprehensive and innovative report has been sent to the City Planning Commission. This effort built upon the successful Guidelines and Principles report that was a result of last year's South Street Seaport Working Group that I worked on with Margaret Chin, council member. In that case, we were planning for the historic area and reacting to a proposed residential tower, which the developer has now withdrawn. Second, we've had 2 public hearings, one on traffic congestion and another on ZQA MIH zoning. 3, we've had 3 community police dialogues that brought together members of the NYPD with all sectors of the community, but especially with young people. 4, we've had 4 housing town halls, 2 for NYCHA residents, 1 for Mitchell-Lama residents, and 1 for HDFC residents. 5, we've had many, many small business roundtables trying to address the need to preserve mom and pop stores. We've had an urban gardening symposium at the Museum of Natural History. We've had a mental health roundtable for school leaders, service providers, and advocates. We've had 2 great mixers, they were a lot of fun, to connect teachers and school administrators with nonprofits and companies providing youth services. One was for tech and one for the arts. We had an LGBTQ town hall in Harlem with a huge turnout. We had an open house New York event where we displayed a conference room size historic map of the borough. And we have ongoing exhibits in our 19th floor art gallery. I've always said that getting a seat at the table with your neighborhood and elected officials is where local government must start. We put that into action with the launch of our Disability Advisory Board, Manhattan Construction Safety Working Group. Every time somebody dies at a construction site, we know we have to stop that. West and Central Harlem Housing Working Group and the Manhattan Borough President's Office Youth Council. They join our existing African Immigrant Task Force and our Senior Advisory Board. I took this office promising that we'd do this together as a real participatory democracy. And to me, that means including New Yorkers of every age. And in 2015, the Upper West Side was recognized by AARP as the 2nd most livable neighborhood in the nation for people 50 and older. While New York City as a whole, thank you, West Siders, while New York City as a whole was named among the top 5 most livable cities among large cities. Let me tell you about Up with Aging, a program spearheaded by our Senior Advisory Board on healthy brain aging to coincide with Brain Awareness Week. This free public event for Manhattan residents aged 60 and above will be held March 20th at the CUNY Graduate Center, 34th Street and 5th Avenue. There'll be flyers in the back. We know the phrase most livable is important to both ends of the age spectrum and to all communities in our borough. I co-sponsored with the City Council legislation that has lowered the eligibility age to serve on New York City community boards from 18 to 16. That is really exciting. Now we have 6 people under age 18 serving on community boards in Manhattan, and hopefully more when we review applications for open community board positions in the coming weeks. And our new Youth Council gives young people a greater voice in shaping the borough. The council is open to those between the ages of 14 and 18 who live, work, or learn in Manhattan. Applications will be available in February. Manhattan teens should apply, and I want to thank all the Manhattan teens who showed up at the two amazing forums we had, one in Harlem and one in the City Hall area. I want to acknowledge the extraordinary hard work of our staff members, volunteers, and interns. Just like Mayor Dinkins, I love interns, who dedicate themselves every day to your well-being and quality of life. Many of them are here today, and if you see them, please thank them for all they do. You'll have a chance to hear from our two extraordinary Deputy Borough Presidents later in the program. But I also want to give a shout out to Chief of Staff Jessica Mates and Special Events Coordinator Penelope Cox. I want to thank Manhattan Neighborhood Network for their wonderful work providing live video coverage. President and CEO Dan Coughlin, Managing Director Greg Sutton, and Zenaida Mendez, Director of MNN El Barrio Firehouse Community Media Center. I want to thank our ASL signers, Jana Owen, Desiree Schlee from All Hands in Motion for making our event accessible to our neighbors with disability. I want to thank Food and Fannis High School for partnering with us to cater this event. And finally, I want to thank my husband, Cal Snyder, our son, Mo Samundo. Please stand up. For their support for me as Borough President, and by extension, all Manhattan residents. Now, the best part, not me, the panel. Let's start our special State of the Borough edition of MNN's Represent New York City with a great panel. Thank you all very much. Welcome to this special State of the Borough edition of Manhattan Neighborhood Network's Represent NYC. I'm excited to welcome 4 New Yorkers whose work has a major impact on cultural, social, economic, and artistic impact in our city. So I'm going to start by looking over there and seeing somebody who's been a friend of mine a very long time, Khary Lazarre-White. He was 21 when he co-founded with his childhood friend, Jason Warwin, Harlem-based Brotherhood, SisterSol. It's a nationally renowned youth organization for which he is executive director. It is an extraordinary group. He was born and raised in New York City, graduated from Brown University, and received his law degree from Yale. He serves on the advisory board of New York City's Young Men's Initiative, the CUNY School for Public Health Advisory Council, and the Board of Advisors for the Heights Endowment Black Male Initiative. He is very, very special. Sumie Okazaki is professor of counseling psychology, as I said earlier, at New York University Steinert School of Culture, Education, and Human Development. In New York City, her research focus is on the impact of immigration and race on Chinese American and Korean American adolescents and young adults. She is also a policy fellow at the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families, CAV, working to improve the education and health of immigrant families and children. She received her PhD in clinical psychology from the University of California, Los Angeles. And now I want to thank you. Yes, she's fabulous. Over to my right is Francisco Núñez. He is the founder and artistic director of the globally acclaimed Young People's Chorus of New York City, and he's the 2011 recipient of the MacArthur Genius Fellowship. Very special. And now I'll tell you a secret. You're not supposed to tell people when you get to MacArthur. He called me 1 minute before he got it, just so you know. He grew up in Washington Heights and graduated from New York University, going on to become a conductor and composer and a national leader in music education. He leads the University Glee Club of New York City and guest conducts orchestras, chamber ensembles, and choirs worldwide. He's very, very special. And now, to the very special, we're honored to have executive chef and restaurateur Marc Murphy. He launched Tribeca's Landmark in 2004 and has since launched a second landmark at the Time Warner Center, which is one of my favorite restaurants in all of New York City, and 2 outposts of his Ditch Plains restaurant in the West Village and on the Upper West Side. He is a judge on the Food Network's Chopped, president of the Manhattan chapter of the New York State Restaurant Association, a board member of the Food Council for City Harvest, and something very special to us in our office, a member of Food and Finance High School Schools Industry Advisory Board. Please welcome our amazing panel. So this panel is very informal. We're going to have a conversation, and I think I'm going to start with you, Khary, because you have a direct relationship with so many young people. And I think what I want to hear from you and from others is, what are some of their main concerns? I know that in our youth council, and from personal experience, it's the high cost of college. It's the issue that if they are working, minimum wage is not enough. And the issue, and I know that Marc will talk about this, is how do you match young people getting training and then being able to get the kinds of jobs that are coming online in our city. So talk a little bit about, opportunities, college, job, and how young people are able to be prepared, or how you help them get prepared for that.
Well, thank you for the invitation to be a part of the conversation today. I think that when we talk about young people, one of the beauty of young people is that they're so direct and clear with regards to what they're focused on, what their interests are, and what's important to them. And so Brotherhood, SisterSol, we provide direct service, and we help young people to navigate the college process and after-school care, and we help them to find jobs and employment. But in addition to that, our young people become organizers. They choose the issues that they want to create change around in their community. And you touched on many of these issues already, but what we hear from our young people is that they want to create better schools, right? We know that roughly 70% of our children are graduating from school right now in New York City in a system of 1.1 million children. That means nearly 400,000 are at risk of failure. Our children feel that every single day. They want a higher quality education that's preparing them for college, preparing them to matriculate to university. Before we even talk about whether they can afford it, they feel that they are not being prepared in all too many of our schools, and that's an issue our young people have organized around. Our young people have organized around the issue of food justice, and they run a farmer's market, and they run a garden where they produce food and bring food from upstate New York to help feed people in West Harlem and what's been designated a food desert because there's a lack of access to high quality food. That's a vital issue to them. And then the third issue that they've really worked on has to do with prison reform and criminal justice reform. Anytime we wake up in this city, we woke up this morning and there are juveniles, there are children incarcerated on Rikers Island, a facility that's overseen by the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office because of what goes on there. All of us should never allow that to continue. Our young people are organizing around that issue. They're organizing around being over-policed in their community. And so I think the conditions that all too many of our children face and the young people at Brotherhood SisterSol, due to the continual issue of poverty, of a lack of opportunity in the city, is what drives them. I know that last year the census was completed in Manhattan. And we are very, very fortunate to have our borough president, who's a deep progressive leader focusing on these issues. But we also know what you and all of us are up against, that in a city of 8.5 million people, 1.7 million people are in poverty. And the biggest, broadest discrepancy in terms of wealth of any county in America is Manhattan, with the top 5% at $860,000 in earned income and the bottom 20 at under $10,000. Those are the young people we work with. And so when you say what's important to them is having an opportunity. What's important to them is breaking cycles of poverty. What's important to them is having an access to jobs and to education that really helps them to build stable lives. And I think that for those who have the least opportunity in the city, for those who are born into those kind of economic conditions, that driving desire to survive those conditions, to really become the men and women that they want to be, is what is the first preeminent thing in their mind. It's really about surviving those conditions so that then they can access opportunity. And I think, when I look at the electeds in the room and and I see so many people who are focused on these issues of how we change our city. That's what drives our young people in their organizing. How do we make a more equitable, more fair, and more just city?
Thank you
Just
very
city.
much. Thank you. Mark, as somebody who does hiring, you understand from your work at Food and Finance and the other work you do in the community, but you also have to do a lot of hiring, and you have a workforce that's changing. So picking up on what Khary said and adding your own discussion to that, what do you think, given that the fact we're competing in a rapidly changing workforce, we have different industries, what do you think are some of the ways that we can have a breakthrough and that young people could be trained differently, or how should entrepreneurship fit into all of this?
Well, I think that we have to look at this, the private and the public have to get together and work together on this issue. I think that we as restaurateurs, and I'm speaking probably for a lot of restaurateurs in this city, we're always looking for good people to work for us. And it's difficult. The work pool is very difficult. And we work a lot with Food and Finance High School, which I'm very happy that they're here catering today. They're an amazing school. They train kids that want to get into this business. There's obviously something that Gail and I have been working on and been trying to get the counselor to change, is the acceptance of people into that school. There's a lot of kids that want to go to Food and Finance High School that are interested in the food business that don't get in because and I know Gail knows a lot more about this, there's a lot of abbreviations when it gets to government, and something about the ability to accept a certain amount of people into the school. Well, for me, it's like, well, if you want to go to Food and Finance, you should want to be able to be in the food business. And I think that's something that we have to look at.
DOE should get their act together.
Exactly. I mean, these kids we want the kids to work for us. We want to give people jobs, and we want the public schools to help train them. And we're more than happy to help train as well. I mean, there's a lot of my colleagues that have sent a letter, that signed this letter to try to get this changed. And we're all in favor of hiring kids and getting apprenticeships and teaching kids how to work. I mean, I know from experience, I didn't go to college. I was a troubled kid in school. I was extremely dyslexic. I found cooking saved my life. I mean, I moved to New York 27 years ago, didn't know what I was going to do with myself, and I got a cooking job, and this is what happened. I've been pretty successful doing this, and I know that kids that aren't always great at school, they can thrive in a restaurant business. I've seen many things happen. I've even seen it on the show that I'm on Chopped, where I've seen kids that have come in and that have been in gangs before and have had to move from one city to another to get away from a gang, and they got a dishwashing job, and they had to leave their families. And you know what? Now they're a sous chef in that town, and they're providing for their girlfriend or their family. And it's heartwarming. I mean, I think the restaurant business can save people's lives, and I think that the city needs to help us help them in a certain sense.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Francisco, you have been so successful with Young People's Chorus and bringing together different communities. And I know you're actually going national. Don't go too national, though. Going national to bring different communities of young people together. But this whole issue of how do you get young people to be able to take the next step, how do you see it from a cultural perspective and also from a training perspective? And I know you get them into college. So trying to answer that question that Khary and Marc have picked up on, like, what's the future for young people and how can we make their future better?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored to be with a great group of people here. And it's interesting, I grew up here in Washington Heights, also on the Upper West Side, in the 60s and 70s, and listening to poverty levels. My mom, except for 1 year, never made more than $9,000 a year. So how can she, working in factories and cleaning homes, have a kid get educated with the father not really being around? And the idea is that she strived as a parent to be involved in my life. And even though she was cleaning someone's home, she would say, would you give my child piano lessons? At that point, I noticed that music for me was something I could do. I am Dominican, but I don't play baseball very well. And I did try for many years. That was an embarrassment. But piano was something that I felt very comfortable with, and music was something I felt very comfortable with. And what it did for me is that it opened up something very unusual. Because I was able to get excellent in an art, I was able to meet people that were very different than I was. They were living in doorman buildings out on 72nd Street. And they didn't have the dangers of going into the buildings. They didn't have the danger of the other kids playing stickball trying to hurt you. And what I decided to do is, why don't we try to get more kids that come from the diverse parts of New York City together in a way that they can learn from each other? Because I started to ask questions. I started to learn, what is Brown University? What are different high schools that we can go to? And when I learned about that, it changed my life. And I was able to go around the world playing the piano because of it, because of all the wonderful people in the other communities. Today at YPC, we bring a very diverse group of children together that, I believe that we need to look at outside of just staying within one community. New York City is changing every single day. With this housing situation that's going on, children are moving in to the neighborhoods that were once a different way. So what do? Do you keep segregating and separating those two children in different after-school programs, or can we bring them together? At YPC, we work very hard to bring the children of hedge funds and the children of working class together to see if they can learn from each other. Because I think the future of this city is going to be stronger if everyone works in that capacity. And then beyond that, you can't just give them notes to sing. Once you build the trust, you have to give them the opportunity to learn, to go to colleges. So if you're telling a child, yes, go to college, how are they going to get there when they get there? Our children, what I've noticed is that when they do go to college, they're still struggling in there because they didn't really have the full capacity and the full knowledge of what to do once they got there. We need to figure out how to train them so that when they go to this society that's very different than the one here in New York City, they'll be able to defend themselves and understand what it's like to study and to behave at a very high level. So we need to create an environment where there's guidance counselors, there's social workers, and every after-school program, and especially in high schools where these children are being told, go to college, but there's no guidance counselor, truly giving all of them an opportunity to understand what the ideas are. Universities want our children, and if we can get them in there, they will help them as well. So
thank you. Sumie. You are so special because not only are you teaching young people at NYU, but you spent a whole year at CAV, which is one of my favorite organizations. And so my question is, from the perspective of immigrant families working hard, trying to make sure that their children are doing well, from your research and from your teaching, how do you try to answer this question of young people in our city? How do they get prepared? What do they need? What are some of your suggestions and all of your amazing research?
Thank you, Gail. And again, thank you for the honor of being part of your panel.
Thank you.
I think what was so special for me to be given the opportunity as university professors, and a lot of stereotypes about university professors being in ivory tower is true, that a lot of us get along just fine without having to step outside of our classrooms. But given the opportunity to work in alongside the community advocates and with the youth leaders that the CACF work with, what struck me was just how much the immigrant community, they're strivers. They come because they want the opportunities. And I think there's a lot of resilience in that community, but I think also, at least for Asian American community, there's a lot of barriers, both structural and cultural, to feeling like they're part of the city. Especially I think in school settings where, as hard as the New York City Department of Education tries to provide language access, there's just simply not enough language access, not enough translation or interpretation services for parents who really want to be part of their kids' education but feel kind of shut out. And a lot of times the teenagers become very self-sufficient. They try to navigate the whole college process on their own, and having two teenage daughters, I kind of get that they don't want their parents to meddle too much. But I've also, worked with parents who, desperately want to be part of their kids' education process, but are just not, the education system is very different from their country of origin. They don't have the language. They oftentimes aren't able to speak to the teachers. The kids also don't get equal access to school, guidance, counseling. With the immigrant community, it's a very bifurcated community. On one hand, you have Asian American kids who are at Stuyvesant or Bronx Science and getting beautiful education and lots of great hands-on college guidance, but they work alongside with other Asian American youth leaders from other communities who are not getting any college guidance and are kind of on their own trying to figure things out. So again, the kids, work together to say, hey, there's something going on here, and at CACF, the kids have been advocating with, alongside the city council members and with city leaders to try to bring more equitable guidance services to all kids, not just Asian American kids, but all kids. But certainly I think there are lots of ways to support the immigrant communities who do want to be part of that solution.
Thank you. Before we go further, I just want to say that we've been joined by Councilmember Rosie Mendez, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, Rebecca C. White, Assembly Member, our very special public advocate, Tish James, Brendan Sexton, who is the ED chair of our Solid Waste Advisory Board, Jay Hershenson, who's the many times a year CUNY Chancellor, Vice Chancellor. He has survived, I think, 7 chancellors, something like that. And Gabe Gallucci, who's from CSA, representing the principals in our city schools. Thank you all very much for being here. So, Khary, my next question is an overall question. We had wonderful forums, as I indicated, with police officers and community, and they were really well attended, and there were a lot of discussions and a report. We did it with Norman Siegel, the civil rights attorney, and my colleague, Eric Adams, Borough President of Brooklyn. But what comes out of it is the need for respect. I mean, that was, if you could say, what's the one issue, is the need to respect between both parties. And then, of course, we have bullying in schools. We're all familiar with that, and bullying on social media. So what can we do as a city to encourage everyone, young people, police officers, residents, to show more tolerance and respect for each other? What kind of programs do we need? What kind of suggestions should city government be making in order to make our city more tolerant so that the bullying on all levels doesn't take place? And not bullying in the broadest sense of the word.
I think that so often we talk now about issues that really are synergistic with ideas of morality and ethics. I mean, I think that's really what you're getting at.
Yep.
How do you live your life? What kind of woman or man will you be? What kind of contributing citizen will you be in our society? And we say that we want young people to learn these things, but where's the space for them to learn it, right? If you're able to teach it in a family structure, that's a wonderful thing, but then maybe it needs to be augmented. But maybe there's a child who doesn't have that in a family structure. Where will you learn those lessons? I think that we have a responsibility as a society to put that front and center, just like we put mathematics and literature and science in our schools. I think a core curriculum component in DOE should be the teaching of ethics in an old school approach. If we want children to struggle with the big issues of the day, they need to be given the foundation to do that, just as we would expect in any other subject. And so I think that's a very practical change that could occur, where New York could really take the lead to ensure that young people are being raised to be leaders and to be moral voices. I also think, though, that while that lesson is extremely important, there are also structural things that have to occur with regards to 2 issues that you raised. With regards to the bullying issue, so many of our children, especially because of the explosion of social media, the level of bullying that they face is entirely different from when many of us grew up in this city, because it can go viral, because their entire school can be aware of horrific teasing that may have only occurred with 2 or 3 other people or on your sports team or something, is now school-wide. And I think that there has to be an approach to the outside use of social media that affects our children within the schools. It can't be seen as outside the school day if it's happening within the school community. With regards to the issue of policing, I think obviously that the conversation is very, very important, and I applaud you for having those conversations. We need people to come together in a humanistic way and to share what those experiences are. But I also think we can't lose sight of the structural issue that is a deep problem within the NYPD. It is the reason for the Floyd case. It's the reason for reform around stop and frisk, which our young people have been very involved in. And to put a human face on that, all of the young men in my organization have been stopped and frisked, including our staff, including me, right? Put down at gunpoint in the streets of New York City for simply walking down the street. That's what the experience is like. And it only happens in particular zip codes, and it only happens to particular people. And so there are structural issues within NYPD that have to be reformed. This is not solely about stop and frisk. This is about a police department that has too many members that do not realize that they have to respect the rights of all citizens and that the Constitution adheres to them as well. And so I think that we have to make sure that both pieces happen, that we share stories and we understand the humanity that we all experience, but that we also understand that there is one aspect of our employees in the city of New York who are armed and have the ability of life and death over its citizens. And we have to ensure that the police department is adhering to the United States Constitution and respecting the rights of all of its citizens.
Thank you very much, Khary. Sumie, I want to ask you something similar, because I know that bullying is an issue in some immigrant communities, and also just this notion of how do we share the same space to work toward common community goals, and how can we improve relationships so that that takes place, so that we have tolerance and respect for all. And I know it's a challenging situation in the immigrant community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for, in terms of bullying, whether it happens in person or in social media, I think a lot of it is that, it's just so hard in our community to have honest and, genuine conversations about differences without resorting to fear and, in some cases hate. And, I think our not just social media, but the adults also, I think, foster that, climate of fear and xenophobia and being afraid of people who are different from us. And certainly our current political climate doesn't help with that conversation where we are able to genuinely talk across each other, with one another. And it's hard work. I think at NYU I teach cross-cultural counseling to mental health professionals and school counselors and other professionals who are wanting to enter that profession, and I'm teaching to the choir, but still, it's a very, very difficult work to understand sort of the structural racism and structural, classism and all those things that keep us from genuinely connecting to each other. And for us to, as a city, to invest, some resources and space for adults as well as kids to be able to have those conversations. And some of the bullying is just, simple ignorance that can be, ameliorated with some more, targeted education. For example, within the South Asian community, many South Asian kids, who are Sikh minority groups are bullied because they're mistaken as, Arab or Middle Eastern, and they're often, castigated, not just by kids, but sometimes by teachers, which, is just astounding, but we do have instances where teachers are also making ignorant comments toward our kids. So again, some of it has to be just better education about differences and, learning about each other's cultures and religions in a way that's respectful. But then I think other is to just, find ways and space to communicate and not be so afraid of, the simple label of being, labeled racist as a reason to not engage in that conversation.
Thank you very much. Francisco, your wonderful organization is in the business that's trying to figure out what the real meaning of tolerance is. And so maybe you could help us, because you actually have been successful in bringing people together.
Well, we strive for it every day. There have been a lot of successes, and there's a lot of places for us to obviously continue to improve. One of the things that I'm noticing is within the organization, we live within our high school, middle school, and elementary school in this bubble that's kind of safe for the children. And then they're leaving our bubble to go, hopefully, to college. 100% of my kids are going on to college. When they get to the university level, they're finding that the bubbles are changed, that there's a safety that's very strange for them, that they're no longer accepted. So if you are black and you have white friends, when you get to college, there's something happening where people are being pushed away from each other based on gender types, based on color, based on race, and the children have to find, or the young people at that time need to figure out where do they stand, who do they stand with. And I'm wondering, what can we do to prepare them?
That happens in high school, too. You don't even have to go to college for that, but go ahead.
It's happening, exactly. It happens in high school, so you have
Even
this.
younger.
So what we do at YPC is that while rehearsals are short, only 2 hours in the afternoons, but we take time to talk. We take time to bring in professionals. We take time to do workshops so they can start to talk to each other about it. Because even though you're going to come to the same rehearsal space and you say you come from one borough and you come from another borough or a different neighborhood, doesn't mean you're going to talk to each other. We as adults have to make them speak with each other and give them a common thread. Our common value is artistic excellence and education. But then that's just not enough. We need to figure out, what are you feeling like that day? So we really do everything we can to incorporate all the options that we have from other organizations in New York City to bring them in and help us to talk with the children and to get the professionals in there. I think that conversation starts to bring down the barriers that are between them, and they start to figure out that it's okay to build trust amongst others. And now I'm hoping that that will continue as they go into high school, they go into colleges. And the bullying situation is pretty serious because what's happening, when they come to our rehearsals, they're downtrodden. They feel very oppressed in many ways. When we ask them what's going on, they don't feel like they have a sense of belonging when they're in these organizations like their schools or their other programs. So we have to figure out how as adults we can make them feel that there is a place for them even though they are different.
Well, you know, Mark, I actually feel that when, this is very unpopular for some people, but when big, huge international companies come to be storefronters in New York, as opposed to you and your colleagues, I feel like I'm being bullied, and I want you to succeed. Now, so that's what I say about chain stores, I'll be honest with you. But I love you. I love you.
Nobody here from Dwayne Reed, I guess, huh?
Yeah, so they know me. But my question to you is, just generally, to pick up on perhaps a broader theme of the small business and persons like you, what can the city do more? Because there is actually a bit of a bullying situation, I think, going on. I know we want to talk about the commercial rent tax and your feelings about that, but in general, what can the city do to be more supportive of small businesses? Because you are, essentially, you're a New Yorker and you have a great business and we want you to succeed.
Well, I think the commercial rent tax is something that's very important. I think a lot of people don't know about it, but I think it's from 96th Street on down. If you have a commercial store, you pay this extra tax, and it just makes it more difficult, especially for smaller businesses. And what we need to do, and I know there's been a lot of conversations about it, is bringing the amount of money that they bring in, if they're below a certain amount, then they don't have to pay that tax. So then it would be taxing sort of the people that Gail doesn't like too much. But I mean, that obviously it would help smaller businesses out, and I think it would make a big difference. So a lot of people, that start a business in New York, they're like, what is this extra line? What's this tax for? It makes no sense whatsoever. But I mean, I think, I'm always I've been living here for a long time, probably about 27 years, and luckily I wasn't born here, but I think the great thing about New York is you can live here for 6 months and be a New Yorker, which is, everybody is so accepting here, which is great. Because I lived in Paris for a long time, and I was there for many years, and you're never a Parisian unless you're born there. So it's different. But I think that, where was I going with this?
I want to find out about small business and how we can be more supportive in general.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want everybody here and everybody in this administration, everybody in the last years, if we look in the rearview mirror and the next thing we know, New York is Starbucks and Citibanks and Chase Banks. I mean, we need them, but we don't need them on every corner. I moved to the city, and there was all these bodegas and all these great little places, and they are disappearing. And I know Gail is very thoughtful in thinking about what we need to do. But what I think this city needs to do, honestly, I think the mayor's office needs to put a task force together and go visit other cities. They need to go to London and realize, why are there still pubs in London? Because I think pubs are actually part of their culture. And I think that small, beautiful restaurants are part of our culture. And I think they need to protect that. And being a restaurateur, I think that people come here to go to Broadway. We think of tourism, they come to Broadway, they come to see the buildings, they come to see us, really, right? But we come to restaurants. And I mean, if all these restaurants disappear, all these little gems that are around the city because they're just being knocked out by bigger buildings or bigger box places, people are not going to come to New York to go to Starbucks. I can assure you of that. Because they can just stay home and do that. But I'm not the one that's going to fix it, but I would love to be in that conversation.
You would be great. Khary, I want to talk a little bit about cultural, because I'm such a big believer in the arts. And I just wanted to know from you, how does that play a role in your organization? Where do you think young people need more of the arts? And is there a place for young people and the arts, and how should they be structured together?
Well, the union movement began in Massachusetts. It came up with the phrase bread and roses.
Yes.
But it's obviously one that has carried a lot of weight here in New York City. You need bread, sustenance for your body, but you need roses, beauty, art for your soul. And that the two things are interconnected. That at the end of the day, if you don't have both, you can't really be a fully evolved human. You can't be somebody who is in touch with all aspects of yourself. And so for Brotherhood, SisterSol, the arts are absolutely key. It's helping young people to identify who they are, to find their voice. It pushes them to explore other parts of who they are. I was just reading something the other day where, Albert Einstein said that the theory of relativity, he discovered it because of music, right? That it wasn't because of sitting there and looking at the issues all the time, but he heard music and that inspired him around the theory of relativity. So you got to develop something like that, Francisco. And so I think that what it does is it makes children more whole. The fact that so many of our schools don't have high quality art programs is an abomination. The fact that children who are coming from working class and poor communities don't have the access that wealthy children do to the arts. We know that in wealthy schools, right? In wealthy schools, you would never walk into a private school in New York City and not find top flight art programs. So why do we allow that in Harlem or in South Jamaica or in Bed-Stuy? I think that something very powerful happens when children follow the arts, which is that they become more creative. I think they become more moral, to your earlier point. I think they get in touch with a side of themselves that often doesn't come through other disciplines. And so if you walk throughout the Brotherhood SisterSol space, our themes are mind, body, and spirit. That we want to develop our young people's minds, their bodies, and their spirits, and that the art is interconnected with all of those. And so you see art all around the walls. When we have our international study programs, and we spend a month in places like Brazil and Haiti and Ghana, one of the things we investigate when we go to those places is the art and culture of those places. Because what we also know is that art builds bridges, and this is, to your point, right? If we want to understand another person's experience, if we want to cross an ethnic barrier, if we want to cross a language barrier, the arts can do that in such a profound way. And so I think we have to really celebrate it, but we also have to cultivate it and make sure that the opportunities are there for all of our children.
Francisco, this is a perfect question for you. What about the arts and young people and what it means to them?
Well, everything Khary is saying is absolutely true. Thank you for supporting it so much with you. And Khary and I actually share some of the same children in our program, so we see it working both sides. One thing about the arts, it has to reach a point of excellence. Now, the word excellence is very difficult to decipher. Children know what's good. So if you just give them a teacher, it's just not enough. The teacher's got to be trained. The teacher has to know what they're doing. They have to know what the end game is going to be. What is the performance value going to be of what we're giving them? Because if we just do art for art's sake and just give them something to draw or something to put together in a play, it's not enough. They need to figure out, if we want them to get great grades in math and science, we have to have the same capacity and same ambition in the arts program. It can't just be something we do for fun. Then beyond that, once you build that art world in their bodies and they start to seek who they are, they start to see other people very differently. And then once you start to see those other people, you start to ask those questions that change you. And I think that the arts can also lead to an overall better education, a holistic education. You'll be better in math, better in science. You'll be better at home. I get calls from parents saying, "What did you do to my child? She's doing the dishes." It changes the person who they are. And I believe that we need to take that trust that we give them. We do give them an arts program. And then maybe if you are an arts program, do what SisterSol is doing and give them the tutoring that they need. Give them the guidance counselors that they need so they can start to make decisions in life. We're not all going to be professional artists, but we must all have art in our systems so that we can be better human beings.
Yeah. Sumie, do you agree with that? And obviously from your perspective, I'm sure that the immigrant communities feel the same way, but access is an issue, as was indicated earlier.
Yes, and I think a lot of times, for immigrant parents, their minds are so full of just trying to get an economic foothold in this country that they're not able to think beyond how do you get our family to survive, how do I get my child to school, and a lot of times they just don't have the headspace. And so I think the immigrant community certainly can be supported with strong arts supplements. And also I think for children and parents to also appreciate each other and, to Khary's point about sharing culture and sharing, appreciating the different cultures, food cultures, the music from different cultures. I think that, that can also connect parents and kids as well. If there's a space for more arts to be shared, not just within the schools, but also across generations, and bring families and parents who have something to contribute to that community to also be part of
So
that.
Mark, the arts are definitely part of our economic opportunities in the city of New York, just like the restaurants and the other ways in which people can make a living. How do the arts play a role in terms of business in New York, do you think?
Well, I mean, for me, my perfect example is my restaurant Landmark in the Time Warner Center. We have jazz at Lincoln Center upstairs. We have New York City Ballet right down the street 2 blocks away, and the Opera and the Philharmonic. And I mean, after performances, people come flowing over to have dinner
Like
afterwards.
me, that's what I do.
We're our restaurant, and that was this precise reason I decided to keep the restaurant open until 2 o'clock in the morning, because I figured people want to have dinner afterwards. We're a city that is pretty much open 24 hours, so we should be there for them.
That makes perfect sense in terms of what the arts provide. The other question I have is just to try to think about technology. I know this is not a topic that is on top of everybody's list, but Khary, I know when I speak at a high school and I say, what is the most exciting aspect of our city? Would everybody like free Wi-Fi? And every hand goes up, every single hand. So what do you think the role of technology is in terms of young people? They're using it, but how could it be used better? How can it be an educational tool? How do you use it?
So, you start with, unfortunately, in terms of our response to it, the deficit issue, right? That there is a digital divide, as we know, and working class and poor communities much less of an access to the high-speed internet, if the internet at all, in terms of having devices, and so they need free Wi-Fi because a lot of times families are not able to afford the exceedingly expensive service that we get in New York for the internet. And so at Brotherhood SisterSol, we provide that access, and we have over 35 computers for young people to use, and we have high-speed internet, of course, as well. We teach aspects of employment that connect to that. So they learn website design and graphic design. They learn how to do animation. They're also doing technology via music and learning how to create music through those means as well. And I think that the points that you're talking about, whether it's technology, whether it's the arts, whether it's food and culture in the city, it also goes back to your original question about what our young people want. They want avenues of employment into those sectors. They want the ability to work in careers that maybe are not as traditional or weren't as traditional a generation ago. And that is an ongoing problem in the city, really access to high-level employment in those spaces. Just 2 days ago, the Times published a piece about the lack of diversity at cultural institutions, right? And so what's happening in terms of the higher level of employment, whether it's at arts institutions, the food business, technology, et cetera, is that open for all of our young people? Are our schools creating those channels? Are they creating the channels to college first, but then also is the CUNY system providing enough of a connection to those spaces as well? I think that's something our young people want very, very much, and I think that for the younger generation, technology is all-consuming. It's like saying, what role does language play with children today? It's essential, and you as parents know that. It's impossible to get the device away from them. But then how do you use that as a positive tool? How do you use that as a way to engage in other spaces? And what we find, as an example, if we travel with our young people and they spend a month in Haiti or in Dominican Republic or in Brazil or in Ghana, the lines of communication now, the global lines of communication are so much more open that you don't have to enforce some type of pen pal situation as we did a generation or two ago. Yeah. They're instantly communicating with one another. They're instantly sharing music and sharing their lives. And so I think technology is inseparable for young people today. And if we don't provide that access in our schools, in our community-based institutions, and in our neighborhoods, then again, we're holding back members of the society solely because of their economic background.
So we have to begin to wrap up. I'm going to ask each person to give one big idea. But my big idea is that Khary should be mayor of City of New York sometime. Francisco, what's your big idea?
This is big. I would like to have a performing arts center just for the students, just for our young people, so that they can go and they can do their program. We cannot afford Carnegie Hall, but they need to have an artistically excellent space that they can be heard.
It's a great idea. Sumie, what's your big idea?
Gosh, I would like the schools, the public schools, to be a space not just for students, but for families and for communities. So open it up, use the space for adult education. Parents want English classes, civics classes, or just any kind of cooking classes. To make it more of a welcoming space so that there's not that divide between, the community and the education for all.
Mark, what's your big idea?
I don't know how big it is, but I think
like it.
I think everybody should, anybody that wants to get into the food industry should have the ability to do that and be trained to be able to get into it. And I have to say that in the food industry, we think about cooking, but it's not just cooking. It's cooking. It's food writing. It's blogs. It's the Food Network and the food has just created so many jobs. And I think somebody told me once that we're the third largest employer, hospitality, third largest employer after government and healthcare. So we are the entry point for immigrants into this country. Everybody has probably worked in a restaurant at least once, and I think that everybody should, because they all go out to eat and they should know what we do. But everybody should be, anybody that wants to get in this business should have the ability to do that.
Khary, I'll let you have a big idea, but I like my big idea.
I would say that as we are inundated with the deeply immoral and unethical race for the Republican nomination on the presidential level, it's a constant affirmation that in this New York City, the most progressive city in our country, we need to take front and center training the future leaders of this nation. And I think having ethics as a core component of all schooling for children, where we're helping to form those citizens, is our responsibility in New York City.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our panelists. They're absolutely unbelievable. And now I'd like to introduce the two deputy borough presidents of the Borough of Manhattan, Alden Bonilla and Matthew Washington, who are going to share some great ways for you to get more involved in your communities and have your voices heard in Manhattan. Thank you both very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gail. I don't know about you, but I feel it. Something very exciting is brewing in the great borough of Manhattan. You feel it? Something very innovative is brewing in the great borough of Manhattan. And I have to say, part of the reason is, and it'll give you the opportunity to show that love, is because Gail Brewer has showed up. She shows up. She shows up 11, 12, 13 different events a day. She steps up. She steps up for seniors, for young people, for the formerly incarcerated. She stands up. She stands up, and you stood up with you at the Solid Waste Advisory Board, at the Community Board, at the bids, at different areas. And that's very important, because we have to field the whole team for the challenges that are ahead for us in Manhattan. Let's not be mistaken. There are serious challenges ahead. We need to be about politics for the suffering, the struggling, the striving, and the successful. As long as the successful play by the rules, don't close the door behind them, and are able to pay fair. We have to make sure that we get involved. And we have to make sure to make sure that the table is set for everyone, that there's room for everyone around the table. Because we're clear, if you're not around the table in the decision making, then you're on the menu. And that menu might have super skyscrapers with a side of congestion. That menu might be construction on weekends with a lot of noise. That menu might be something you don't want to order. So get involved. Join your community boards. Join the Solid Waste Advisory Board. Join the bid. Get involved. We need you. And a very good example of being on board and getting involved is our Deputy Borough President, Matthew Washington, former chair of Community Board 11, who knows all too well about public service. And it's a pleasure and an honor to introduce him. Matthew.
Thank you, Aldrin. As you can see, I'm the larger Deputy Borough President, but Aldrin has the bigger voice. Gail mentioned that Khary should be in City Hall, but maybe Khary should go to the White House. I just wanted to thank you all once again for joining us this afternoon. There are just a few more things I want to let you know about before we enjoy each other's company during the reception. Funding. We have funding, and we want your organizations to apply for it. Every year, Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer provides funding in support of various important capital projects throughout the borough. Whether it's fixing the roof at a branch library, renovating a playground, or building a new computer lab at a local school, these capital awards strengthen our borough, our city, and improve people's lives. In fiscal year 2016, we awarded $30 million to great capital projects in Manhattan that included improvements and purchases for 92 schools, 9 CUNY and SUNY campuses, 16 public parks, and many more great organizations. We're pleased to let you know that the fiscal year 2017 capital funding applications are being accepted through Friday, February 12th. We welcome any interested organization to meet with our staff to learn more about the process. We also partner with the New York City and Company Foundation to provide support for cultural tourism programs, which are designed to raise awareness about the diversity and excitement of the arts in Manhattan's neighborhoods. On top of the funding programs we have, we also sponsor some terrific and informative public events throughout the year. If you'd like to stay in touch with everything we have going on, you probably have Gail's phone number, but I encourage you to sign up for Gail's e-newsletter. You can do that today by giving us your email address or by going to our website and clicking on News and Events and then MBPO newsletter to sign up. I speak for Gail, Aldrin, and our entire staff in saying that Manhattan would not be the great place it is without all of you. So thank you for being great. And now, it's my pleasure to invite all of you to join us for a reception, to say hello, and to have something to eat, provided by the High School for Food and Finance. Have a wonderful afternoon.